Imagine waking up tomorrow, checking your bank account, and realizing your salary has just doubled. Most people would celebrate. They'd believe they finally escaped financial stress. But what if I told you that for millions of people, a higher salary doesn't create freedom? It simply builds a more expensive prison. That sounds impossible. After all, we've spent our entire lives believing one simple idea. Study hard. Get a good job. Earn a bigger salary. And everything else will eventually fall into place. It's a formula so familiar that almost nobody questions it. But here's something strange. If that formula truly worked, why are so many high-income professionals still living paycheck to paycheck? Why are doctors, lawyers, engineers, and corporate executives earning more money than ever, yet feeling more financially trapped than ever before? This isn't an accident. And it certainly isn't because they aren't smart. The truth is far more uncomfortable. Because somewhere along the way, society quietly replaced one question with another. Instead of asking, how can I become financially free? Most people were taught to ask, how can I earn a bigger salary? At first, those questions sound almost identical. But they're not. One creates freedom. The other can create dependence. And understanding the difference might completely change the way you think about work, money, and your future. By the end of this documentary, you'll understand why some of the wealthiest people in the world stopped chasing bigger paychecks long ago and started building something almost nobody teaches in school. Because the biggest trap isn't having a job. The biggest trap is believing your salary is your greatest financial asset. And once you see how this system really works, you may never look at your next paycheck the same way again. Most people believe they're paid for the value they create. But that's rarely true. They're paid for the time they're willing to trade. And that single difference changes everything. Think about it. The moment you accept a salary, you've made an invisible agreement. You promise your time, your energy, your attention, your creativity. In return, you receive a fixed amount of money. At first, it feels like a fair exchange. After all, everyone needs an income. But here's the question almost nobody asks. What happens when your lifestyle begins growing faster than your salary? A bigger apartment, a nicer car, more subscriptions, better restaurants, new gadgets, expensive vacations. None of these purchases feel dangerous on their own. In fact, they often feel like proof that you're finally succeeding. But slowly, without even noticing, your monthly obligations begin replacing your freedom. And that's the moment the trap quietly closes. Because now, missing a single paycheck no longer feels inconvenient. It feels terrifying. Here's the first philosophy you were almost never taught. The moment your expenses require your next salary, your salary no longer serves you. You begin serving it. Read that again. Most people think they work for a company. In reality, many people work for the lifestyle they accidentally built. That's why two people earning exactly the same income can live completely different lives. One feels trapped. The other feels free. The difference isn't income. It's dependence. This is exactly why increasing your salary often creates only temporary happiness. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation. Human beings adapt incredibly fast. The raise that once felt life-changing becomes normal. The new car becomes ordinary. The larger house soon feels average. Your expectations rise. Your spending follows. And suddenly, you're working just as hard as before, only to maintain a more expensive version of the same life. It's like running on a treadmill. You're moving constantly. You're exhausted. But financially, you're standing in almost the same place. This isn't a personal failure. It's a system almost everyone enters without realizing it exists. Schools teach us how to earn. Companies teach us how to perform. Banks teach us how to borrow. Advertisers teach us how to spend. But almost nobody teaches us how to separate income from freedom. Because those are not the same thing. Not even close. And once you understand, you begin seeing money through a completely different lens. Because the wealthy rarely ask, "How much do I earn?" Instead, they ask, "What happens if I stop working tomorrow?" That single question exposes the difference between income and wealth. Imagine two people. The first earns $200,000 every year. The second earns only half of that. Most people would immediately assume the first person is wealthier. But what if the first person's entire lifestyle depends on showing up at work every Monday morning? The mortgage, the luxury car, private school fees, credit card payments, insurance, subscriptions. Every expense quietly waits for the next paycheck. Now imagine the second person. A smaller house, lower expenses, but investments that generate income while they sleep. Assets that continue working, even when they don't. Who is actually richer? The answer surprises most people. Because wealth has never been measured by income. It's measured by independence. Here's another philosophy almost nobody talks about. Money isn't freedom. The ability to say no is. If you can't walk away from your job, your boss, or a toxic workplace, because missing one paycheck would destroy your life, then your salary hasn't created freedom. It has simply delayed the consequences. This is why some people earning six figures still feel anxious every Sunday night. They're highly paid, but emotionally dependent. And dependence always creates fear. Fear of layoffs. Fear of recession. Fear of disappointing the company. Fear of saying no. The salary becomes more than money. It becomes survival. And once survival enters the equation, people stop making long-term decisions. They begin making safe decisions. They reject opportunities. Avoid calculated risks. Stay inside comfortable routines. Not because they lack ambition, but because they can no longer afford uncertainty. The trap becomes psychological long before it becomes financial. This is exactly how the system protects itself. It doesn't need chains. It simply gives people responsibilities they become afraid to lose. The bigger the lifestyle, the stronger the invisible cage. Ironically, many promotions don't increase freedom. They increase dependency. A bigger paycheck often arrives together with a bigger house, a bigger loan, a more expensive car, and higher expectations. From the outside, it looks like success. Inside, the pressure quietly grows. That's why financial freedom isn't created by increasing income forever. It's created by reducing dependence, while increasing ownership. Ownership of assets. Ownership of skills. Ownership of your time. Because the people who truly become wealthy stop asking, "How can I earn more?" They begin asking a far more dangerous question. What can earn money without needing me every single day? And once that question enters your mind, it's almost impossible to think about your salary the same way ever again. There's another belief almost everyone grows up accepting. If I work harder, I'll become wealthier. It sounds logical. It sounds fair. And in many ways, it even sounds inspiring. But there's one problem. The world's wealthiest people rarely become wealthy by working the hardest. Instead, they become wealthy by building systems that continue working, even when they don't. Think about that for a moment. A surgeon can earn an incredible income, but every dollar still depends on one person showing up. The day the surgeon stops working, the income slows down. Now compare that to someone who owns businesses, real estate, intellectual property, or investments. They may not work every single hour, yet value continues to flow. Income continues to arrive. The difference isn't effort. The difference is leverage. And leverage is one of the least understood concepts in personal finance. Here's the next philosophy bomb. Hard work creates income. Leverage creates wealth. That's why two people can work equally hard, yet finish life with completely different financial outcomes. One keeps selling time. The other builds assets that multiply time. This is also why wealthy people obsess over buying assets, while everyone else is busy upgrading liabilities. One group purchases things that pay them. The other purchases things they must keep paying for. The dangerous part is that both lifestyles can look identical from the outside. Both may drive luxury cars. Both may live in beautiful homes. Both may wear expensive watches. But behind the scenes, their financial realities are completely different. One owns their lifestyle. The other rents it every month through future paychecks. That's why appearances are one of the biggest financial illusions in modern society. Social media has only made that illusion stronger. You're constantly shown people spending money. Rarely are you shown how they actually make it. You see vacations, not debt. Luxury cars, not monthly payments. Success, not financial stress. And slowly, without realizing it, people begin copying lifestyles instead of copying financial strategies. That's exactly what the system wants. Because consumers keep economies moving. Investors quietly build wealth. There's nothing wrong with enjoying money. The problem begins when consumption becomes your identity. Because once your identity depends on looking successful, you'll spend years trying to prove something, instead of building something. Real wealth doesn't need constant attention. It doesn't ask for validation. It grows quietly, almost invisibly, long before anyone notices the results. That's why the richest people often focus less on earning their next dollar, and more on creating assets that will earn the next 1,000. And once you understand the difference between working for money and making money work for you, you stop chasing a bigger salary. You start building a life where your income is no longer tied to every hour you can physically give. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because if salaries aren't designed to create wealth, then why does almost everyone spend their entire life chasing a higher one? The answer has very little to do with money, and almost everything to do with psychology. Human beings naturally seek certainty. We want predictable outcomes, predictable income, predictable routines, predictable futures. A monthly salary gives us exactly that. It creates the comforting illusion of control. Every month, money arrives. Bills get paid. Life continues. And over time, our brain begins treating that routine as safety. But certainty has a hidden cost. It slowly reduces your willingness to take intelligent risks. Here's something fascinating. Most successful entrepreneurs weren't born fearless. They simply became comfortable with uncertainty. While most employees are rewarded for avoiding mistakes, builders are rewarded for solving problems. That's a completely different mindset. And mindset eventually shapes financial outcomes. Here's another philosophy bomb. The greatest financial risk isn't taking a calculated risk, it's becoming completely dependent on certainty. Think about it. If one company controls your income, one decision made in a boardroom can instantly change your future. A merger, a recession, budget cuts, artificial intelligence, one email. That's all it takes. Yet millions of people call that security. Meanwhile, someone with 5 different income streams may earn less from each individual source, but sleeps better at night. Because no single decision can destroy everything they've built. This is why wealthy people diversify more than investments. They diversify income itself. Not because they expect disaster, but because they understand uncertainty will eventually arrive. The question isn't if, it's when. History has proven this repeatedly. Entire industries disappear. Technology replaces jobs. Markets change. Skills become outdated. The people who survive these changes aren't always the smartest. They're usually the most adaptable. And adaptability comes from ownership. Owning valuable skills. Owning assets. Owning businesses. Owning intellectual property. Owning investments. Every layer of ownership reduces dependence. Every layer increases freedom. That's why financial freedom is never built in one giant leap. It's built through dozens of small decisions, repeated consistently over years. One investment. One new skill. One asset. One opportunity. one better decision after another. Eventually, those small choices begin creating momentum. And momentum changes everything. Because once your assets begin producing income, your salary quietly becomes optional instead of essential. That's the moment the trap finally begins to lose its power. And what happens next is the exact strategy the wealthy have quietly used for generations. So, what's the escape? If a salary alone isn't enough, what actually creates financial freedom? The answer isn't quitting your job tomorrow. And it certainly isn't becoming an entrepreneur overnight. That's one of the biggest myths on the internet. Financial freedom isn't built through reckless decisions. It's built through intentional ones. The wealthy rarely gamble with their future. They build it, one asset at a time. Here's where most people make a critical mistake. The moment they receive a raise, they upgrade their lifestyle. A better apartment, a newer car, more expensive habits. It feels like progress. But in reality, they've just increased the cost of staying exactly where they are. Now imagine doing the opposite. Imagine receiving a raise, but keeping your lifestyle almost the same. Instead of buying a liability, you buy an asset. Instead of increasing your monthly expenses, you increase your monthly cash flow. At first, the difference seems small, almost insignificant. But compound that decision over 5 years, or 10, and the gap becomes enormous. Here's another philosophy bomb. The rich don't become wealthy because they earn more. They become wealthy because they keep buying things that keep paying them back. That's the difference. One person spends every extra dollar. The other recruits every extra dollar to become an employee. Think of every dollar as a worker. Most people send that worker shopping. The wealthy send that worker out to earn more workers. And that's why their wealth grows even while they're sleeping. This is the real power of compounding. Not just compound interest. Compound decisions. Compound habits. Compound ownership. Small actions repeated consistently become extraordinary results. The problem is, compounding is invisible in the beginning. Which is exactly why most people quit too early. Human beings love immediate rewards. We struggle to stay committed when results can't be seen. But wealth has always rewarded patience. Just like planting a tree. Nothing dramatic happens on the first day. Or the first month. Sometimes. Not even the first year. Yet beneath the surface, the roots are growing stronger every single day. Money works the same way. The first asset feels insignificant. The second doesn't change your life either. Even the fifth may seem disappointing. But eventually, there comes a moment where your assets begin producing enough income to buy even more assets. That's when the system starts working for you, instead of against you. It's a quiet turning point. One that almost nobody notices. Until it becomes impossible to ignore. And once you understand this principle, you stop asking, how can I earn a bigger paycheck? You begin asking, how can every paycheck buy a little more freedom? Because that's the question. That eventually changes everything. There's one final illusion. perhaps the most dangerous one of all. It's the belief that financial freedom is something you'll build later. After the promotion. After the next raise. After paying off the loan. After the kids grow up. After life finally slows down. But here's the uncomfortable truth. For most people, later never arrives. Because every new stage of life introduces new responsibilities, new expenses, new expectations. The finish line keeps moving. And without realizing it, people spend decades preparing to become financially free, instead of actually becoming financially free. Here's the final philosophy bomb. The best time to build wealth isn't when you have more money. It's when you first understand how money actually works. That realization changes everything. Because wealth has never been reserved for people with the highest salaries. It's been built by people with the strongest financial habits. They understand something most people never do. Income creates opportunities. Ownership creates freedom. And freedom is the true purpose of wealth. Imagine two futures. In the first, you continue doing exactly what you've always done. You work hard, receive raises, upgrade your lifestyle, take on bigger financial commitments. Repeat. From the outside, everything looks successful. But underneath, your dependence quietly grows stronger. Now imagine a different future. You still work. You still earn. But every paycheck buys one more piece of your freedom. One investment. One asset. One valuable skill. One additional income stream. Slowly, your money begins working longer hours than you do. Eventually, there comes a day when your investments pay a bill you once paid with your salary. Then another. Then another. Until one morning, you realize something remarkable. Your life is no longer supported by today's work alone. It's supported by yesterday's decisions. That's the moment wealth stops being a dream and becomes a system. A system that continues creating value. Whether you're awake or asleep. Whether you're at work. Or spending time with your family. Whether you're young. Or decades into retirement. That's why the goal was never to escape work. The goal was to escape dependence. Because meaningful work can be fulfilling. Dependence rarely is. So before you chase your next promotion, ask yourself one simple question. Will this paycheck make me richer? Or simply make my lifestyle more expensive? That single question may completely change every financial decision you make for the rest of your life. Because your salary was never the destination. It was only supposed to be the starting point. And the moment you stop treating income as the finish line, you begin building something far more valuable. Not just money. Not just success. But the one thing every wealthy person ultimately protects above everything else. The freedom to choose how they live their life. If you've made it this far, you've probably realized something. This documentary was never about convincing you to quit your job. Jobs aren't the enemy. Salaries aren't evil. The trap is believing they're enough. A salary can give you stability. It can help you support your family. It can fund your dreams. But it was never designed to create lasting freedom by itself. That's your responsibility. And that's actually good news. Because it means your future isn't controlled by your employer. It isn't controlled by the economy. And it isn't controlled by luck. It's controlled by the financial decisions you repeat every single month. Every paycheck gives you a choice. Spend it all. Or let a small part of it start working for your future. One decision builds comfort. The other builds freedom. At first, the difference is invisible. Months pass. Nothing dramatic happens. Years pass. Still, it feels slow. But then something remarkable begins to happen. Your investments grow. Your knowledge compounds. Your skills become more valuable. Your assets begin producing income. Opportunities appear that you couldn't even see before. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because you changed. Here's one final philosophy bomb to leave you with. Financial freedom isn't built by making one brilliant decision. It's built by refusing to make the same expensive mistake over and over again. That's how wealth is really created. Quietly. Patiently. Deliberately. The media celebrates overnight success. Reality rewards consistent progress. The world tells you to earn more. The wealthy quietly focus on owning more. The world encourages bigger lifestyles. The wealthy build stronger foundations. The world measures success by income. The wealthy measure success by options. Because when you have options, you have freedom. The freedom to change careers. The freedom to say no. The freedom to spend time with your family. The freedom to pursue meaningful work instead of necessary work. And perhaps that's the greatest luxury money can ever buy. So the next time your salary arrives, don't just ask yourself, what can I afford to buy? Ask something much more powerful. What part of this paycheck can I invest into buying back my future? Because every dollar has a destination. It can disappear the moment you spend it. Or it can become an employee that works for you for decades. The choice has always been yours. Maybe that's the biggest secret wealthy people understand. They don't see money as something to consume. They see it as something to recruit. If this documentary changed the way you think about money, then don't let it end here. Challenge one belief you've always accepted. Start one habit you've always delayed. Buy one asset instead of one liability. Because wealth isn't built in one extraordinary moment. It's built through ordinary decisions. Made consistently. Long after the excitement fades. And one day, you'll look back and realize your salary didn't make you wealthy. The choices you made after receiving it did. Before we end, there's one question worth asking. If everything you've heard today is true, why doesn't everyone already know it? Because the modern world doesn't reward financial understanding. It rewards financial activity. The more you borrow, the more someone earns. The more you spend, the more someone profits. The more you depend on your next paycheck, the more predictable your behavior becomes. That's not a conspiracy. It's simply how the system functions. Businesses exist to make money. Banks exist to lend money. Advertisers exist to encourage spending. Employers exist to buy your time. None of those things are inherently wrong. The mistake is expecting those systems to prioritize your financial freedom. Only you can do that. And that realization is incredibly powerful. Because the moment you stop blaming the economy, your boss, or your salary, you take back control. Here's the final philosophy bomb. Freedom doesn't begin when your income increases. Freedom begins the moment your financial decisions become intentional. That single shift changes everything. Instead of asking, "How much money did I make this month?" you begin asking, "How many future months did I strengthen?" That's how wealthy people think. Every decision is viewed through the lens of tomorrow, not just today. They understand that today's sacrifice becomes tomorrow's freedom, while today's impulse often becomes tomorrow's burden. Remember, wealth isn't a number. It's a relationship. A relationship between your income, your spending, your investments, and most importantly, your mindset. Change only your income, and your life may improve temporarily. Change your mindset, and every future dollar begins working differently. That's why true financial education is so valuable. It doesn't just change your bank account. It changes the decisions that create your bank account. And those decisions, repeated over years, become your future. So if you remember only one idea from this documentary, let it be this. Your salary is not your prison. Your salary is not your freedom either. It's simply a tool. A tool that can either finance a lifetime of consumption or finance a lifetime of independence. The difference has never been the paycheck. The difference has always been the person holding it. And maybe that's the most empowering financial lesson of all. Because starting today, every paycheck that enters your account carries a question. Will this money disappear? Or will part of it begin building the life that one day allows you to choose, instead of needing permission? That answer will quietly shape the rest of your financial future. One day, you'll receive a paycheck just like you always have. The notification will appear on your phone. Your bank balance will increase. And for a brief moment, everything will feel exactly the same. But if this documentary has done its job, you'll never look at that paycheck the same way again. Because now you'll understand something most people never stop to question. A paycheck is not proof that you're becoming wealthy. It's simply proof that you exchanged another month of your life. The real question begins after the money arrives. Where will it go? Will it disappear into expenses that need to be paid again next month? Or will part of it begin building a future where your money starts working harder than you do? That single decision, repeated month after month, becomes the difference between financial survival and financial freedom. The wealthy aren't financially free because they discovered a secret investment, or because they were lucky, or because they earned the biggest salaries. They became wealthy because they made thousands of ordinary decisions that most people ignored. One book instead of one unnecessary purchase. One investment instead of one impulse buy. One asset instead of one liability. 1 year of patience instead of 1 moment of gratification. None of those choices look impressive in the moment. That's why almost nobody notices them. But time notices. Compounding notices. The future notices. And eventually, your bank account notices too. That's the quiet power of discipline. It's invisible. Until suddenly it isn't. If there's one message worth remembering from everything we've explored today, it's this. Your financial future is rarely changed by what you earn. It's changed by what you repeatedly do after you earn it. That is where wealth is created. Not on payday, but in the days that follow. So the next time someone asks, "What's your salary?" maybe that's no longer the most important question. Perhaps a better question is, what percentage of your salary is buying back your future? Because every paycheck has 2 possible destinations. One keeps you running. The other helps you eventually stop running. One creates temporary comfort. The other creates permanent options. And options are the highest form of wealth. Thank you for watching. If this documentary challenged the way you think about money, consider sharing it with someone who's working incredibly hard, but still feels like they're getting nowhere. Because sometimes, the most valuable investment you can make is changing the way someone thinks. And if you want more documentaries that break down the hidden psychology of wealth, money, success, and freedom, subscribe to the channel. Because the next lesson might completely change the way you see the world. One final thought. Imagine yourself 10 years from now. Not your bank account. Not your job title. Not the car in your driveway. You. The person you've become. Ask yourself one simple question. Would your future self thank you for the financial decisions you're making today? Because the future isn't created by dramatic moments. It's built by ordinary days that nobody pays attention to. The paycheck you receive this month may be forgotten, but the investment you make this month could still be paying you 20 years from now. The book you read today could completely change the opportunities you recognize tomorrow. The skill you learn this year could become the income that replaces your salary one day. That's how freedom quietly begins. Not with a lottery ticket. Not with a miracle. But with awareness. Then discipline. Then consistency. The world often celebrates people after they've become wealthy. Very few people celebrate the years when they were quietly building it. That's because real wealth grows in silence. No applause. No headlines. No instant validation. Just small intelligent decisions, stacked on top of each other, until they become impossible to ignore. Here's the last philosophy bomb. Most people spend years trying to look wealthy. Truly wealthy people spend years becoming wealthy. Those are 2 completely different games. One is built on appearance. The other is built on ownership. One depends on attention. The other depends on patience. And patience has always been one of the highest paying financial skills in history. So don't measure your progress by comparing yourself to people on social media. Measure it by one question. Am I more financially independent than I was last year? If the answer is yes, you're already winning. even if nobody else can see it yet. Because freedom grows quietly, just like a seed beneath the ground. For weeks, nothing appears to happen. But underneath, everything is changing. One day, that invisible progress breaks through the surface. And people call it overnight success. It never was. It was simply years of invisible preparation. So whether you're earning your first salary, or your 100th, remember this. Your paycheck is only the fuel. Your decisions determine the destination. Spend wisely. Own patiently. Think independently. And never confuse a high income with a high level of freedom. Because in the end, the richest person in the room isn't always the one earning the most money. It's the one who has the most control over their own time, their own choices, and ultimately, their own life.